Welcome to the Stones of Strength podcast, an audio plinth upon which we will endeavor to centralize and showcase stories and information related to the lifting of historical and non-historical stones and the ongoing development and re-emergence of stone lifting culture. Welcome to episode 27 of the Stones of Strength podcast, where we had the absolute pleasure to talk to academic researcher and Icelander Gísli Már Gíslason. And it was just such a wonderful opportunity to talk to someone who is not only incredibly knowledgeable about Icelandic stones, but someone who grew up in and around some of the traditions that were the impetus for why some of these tests of strength were created. He grew up on the coast of Latra, in and amongst some of the fishing villages that up until that point, many of which were still using as testing stones. And he shared a lot of new information about Icelandic historical lifting stones with us. He also made clarifications on some of the history that was already fairly well understood, information on stones, many of you that have probably already lifted that have titles associated with them, which you'll find out about in the episode. And it was such a cool information sharing. And obviously he was sharing a lot more information with us than we were vice versa. But part of what made the conversation so interesting and the prospect of having him on so exciting was that he has no social media presence. No. He had no understanding up until discussions he had with you in the lead up to the episode, and as well as and shout out to Daniel Byrne who connected us with Gísli. Daniel had hired Gísli to be his tour guide when he went on a historical stone tour, and Gísli was marveling at the fact that there was videos Daniel had of Scotsmen over in Iceland wearing their kilts lifting Icelandic stones. He had no idea that this greater stone lifting community existed and was so interested and passionate about Icelandic lifting stones and the history associated with the stone. So
you'd never heard of the Fullsterkur documentary, which is most people's introduction to Icelandic stone lifting. And so it was really cool talking to a man that was almost a time capsule, so to speak. And what a lovely guy he was, with so much information and passion. And he is almost reflective in the concept of an Icelandic version of Peter Martin, in that he is an amazing researcher, but he's not lifting the stones. Mm-hmm. So his is from a side of research and passion purely. Yeah. And to, record this history. Yeah. Yeah.
It was a singular perspective from someone. So he had, no skin in the game as far as trying to, exaggerate or overemphasize the coolness and the history of some of these stones. It was very matter of fact. Yeah. This is what the purpose of this stone was. This is how it was used. This is how it's understood to be used. And that's it. There was no associations with Viking lore and trying to tie it into some pop culture and things like that. It was purely from a historian's perspective.
He stuck with the facts.
Which is wonderful. And
great.
And it's no more important to be sticking with the facts and really holding reverence for accuracy of information, especially when it comes to historical stones, than it is right now. And so we had fully intended to get this episode out last week. So last week would have been, we were thinking maybe May 23rd, 24th, 25th. But unfortunately, last week was a pretty heavy week in the world of stone lifting. We all were witness to some of the most egregious treatment of modern and historical lifting stones possibly ever. But it all kind of kicked off, at least for us, with this sort of building weight and frustration with what was going on. Was a post that I stumbled across because, to play the cards on the table, I'm not a pro wrestling fan. I'm hoping that this story found my feed because of the association with stone lifting. But a week and a bit ago, I was greeted with something on my Instagram feed, and it was a post claiming that Brock Lesnar had lifted the Dinnie stones. And, in big, bold letters at the bottom, young Brock Lesnar lifted the famous Dinnie stones. And it's Brock in all of his juiced up glory in a spaghetti strap tank top, rocking up and picking up two-handled stones. And for anyone who is passionate about historical stone lifting, they would have, and they did identify right away, because by the time I made it to the comments section, a bunch of people had already made the clarification.
So good job.
Yeah. Hats off to you all, that these were not the Dinnie stones. They were fixed ring stones. They were far smaller. And so Brock walks up to the first one, picks it with one hand, walks up to the second one, picks it up with two hands. And the unfortunate thing, and when we're just, again, on the topic of accuracy of information, at that time, this post had hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views, 50,000+ likes, so many comments and interactions. And all of it was mischaracterizing, number one, what the Dinnie stones looked like. Mm-hmm. Number two, who had lifted them. And it's not a slight of Brock, because he's an absolute phenom of strength.
He could lift the Dinnie stones.
He could walk up today probably and lift the Dinnie stones, right? Yeah. It's not about him
Yeah.
Brock probably didn't even know. And a lot of these pro wrestling fans were upset about it. They're like, oh, Brock could have done this and Brock could kick your ass and whatever. Like, number one, Brock doesn't know these posts exist. Number two, it's not a slight at him. Number three, if you want to lift him, he can. It's about how these historical stones are being mischaracterized. And so I commented on the post because, number one, again, now there's a whole bunch of people and pro wrestling fans, people who are sort of like strength sport adjacent, that now don't understand what the Dinnie stones look like. They don't understand the process of how to lift the Dinnie stones, and they don't understand how to lift the Dinnie stones, because you cannot, they don't just sit in a field so someone can walk up, lift them however they want for various reasons. And a lot of it's attributed to liability and protecting the integrity of the stones. Those stones are kept under lock and chain at the Belogi estate, and there's a process to be able to lift them. So number one, the stones, someone tried to steal one of them previously. And then number two, Belogi estate as a private landowner and a business with the cafe there, they can't just have anyone going up and lifting these stones, because if someone were to get hurt, unfortunately, we all live, especially in North America, in a litigation culture. Quite possibly they could get sued. And so I made the clarification. And then within about 24 hours, that post was picked up and parroted by the WWE UK's page. And I want to clarify that the WWE UK page did not specifically say that these are the Dinnie stones. They said when in Scotland, and had a little emoji of the Scottish flag. But all the comments were about Brock lifted the Dinnie stones, so I made a second clarification. I took the screenshot of some of those posts and our comments, and I put them onto our page to say, and it was the original. It was, so the first post came out from this like wrestling news publication or whatever. So I took that screenshot of that where it says young Brock Lesnar lifted the Dinnie stones, just put a big red X through it. And the description is all about how, no, he had not. It's not a slight on Brock, but this is why it's important to clarify information, because now all these people are moving through their day with their misconception, right? Possibly never again to interact with the Dinnie stones or the stone lifting community, but now they have this misconception about the Dinnie stones on a number of levels. And this is the first time in my experience, and I know for you on your personal page, it's a little different, because you get, your videos get punted in the trollosphere quite often. But this video now has over 50,000 views, or this post has over 50,000 views, 1,500 interactions, very happily a lot of like over 1,100 likes. So, one out of about every 50 people who saw the post cared enough about it to like it and show support for the message. But it also exposed the fact that there are so many people that consider historical stones as just being rocks with no consideration for the history that are embodied by these rocks. And a lot of people were like, who cares? It's just a rock. Who cares? It's just a rock. Who cares? It's just a rock. And so that was the first sort of instance where we go, okay, like, as we've all talked about, and not just we, but many people in the stone lifting community, it's on the precipice of sort of getting punted into public view, and we all need to do what we can to try to sort of steer the optics of it all and make sure we're prioritizing the importance of the history of the lifting stone versus the importance of lifting of the history. And so a couple days later, and we all, jump on Instagram at whatever time it was in the day to see some of the most egregious examples of modern historical stone lifting ever.
Yeah, that was a disappointing one. We're not going to dwell on it. We've all probably said our piece if you're hearing this at this point. But I think something that's very important to highlight is that we will always stand our ground on our values. And this is just our values. We use our podcast, our page, our platform to express what we feel is right, as everybody should do with their own point of views. And so, but I think is my point of view, at least, and I think you feel similar, is that we need to match the infraction and the response accordingly. Many times from the podcast page, from a personal page, you'll see somebody who maybe has a great lift of a stone, gets overexcited and slams it down, and we will reach out to them, respect and say, hey, just a heads up, that's kind of, you got to be really careful with these. And
usually privately
first. And they are extremely positive. I just didn't know. It's like, yeah, of course you didn't know. No big deal, because you went there, you clearly care about this stuff, and you just maybe missed that. But this is a different instance. This was a group of guys getting rowdy. They've been on a stone lifting tour with a bunch of dudes. Looks unbelievably fun. And I understand group thing is a thing and people get hyped up off each other. I've been competed in enough competitions where I know how that vibe is, but most of us would acknowledge that these historical lifting stones, they're a different thing. They brought a crash pad. They chose not to use it at all. And the backlash was pretty severe, and I think the infraction was pretty severe, and that's the balance of things. And I reached out to the individual privately to have that private conversation and ask, like, hey man, that, like, I told him straight up, I'm like, that was brutal, but what were you thinking? Here's the opportunity for us to have a conversation. And he blocked me.
Yeah.
And so you're not interested in even having a conversation.
No.
So this is what happens, man.
Yeah.
Like it's, you were brutal and you got a brutal response, not just from us, but people were pissed. And if you manage to piss off like this global community is one of the most, and I've said this many times and I'll say it again, one of the most welcoming, kind, open-minded group of people that will give you their research, their travel tips, their stone lifting techniques. They will just offer it up to you because they care about this stuff and they want you to have the best possible chance to have the best possible trip and the biggest possible lifts. People will give you all that information for the love of it. So if you manage to piss off that group of people, that's on you. Like, it really is.
The first time almost unanimously too.
Yeah.
Across the board, people were frustrated about this and all to a fairly similar level because like you said, the level of the infraction was met with a level of response that I think was appropriate because it wasn't just one lift. It was a whole bunch of lifts that showed ignorance for how to lift the stones and how to treat them on various stones at various levels, right? He was trying to overhead press stones, nearly tripping on other stones, slamming them down, shouldering stones, slamming them down, picks up the Peak District Dinny stone, the smaller one, ring down, drops it ring down onto the hard platform. So people were understandably upset. And I don't think this was an instance of someone just not knowing any better. Clearly, they went to the trouble of buying the kilts, planning the trip, bringing a crash mat, all these things. And it was, I think there's good and bad with this situation. So the good is that he was not injured because some of the videos, like when he was trying to overhead press a stone, he very easily could have tripped on the smaller stone that was by his feet, the one he dropped the other stone inches from, and very seriously hurt himself. So he wasn't injured. Stones weren't broken. And this instance really raised the intensity of conversations within the community around how we can all be doing more to try to highlight the importance of the history of these stones, as well as what can be done to move towards preserving them so that the opportunity to put our hands on these pieces of lithified history doesn't end with us, right? It's preserved so that our children, our children's children have the same privilege to take part in a stone tour and garner the same camaraderie and incredible life experiences that we all have, which
is life altering for a lot of people. You talk to enough people, I'm sure everybody, anyone that's gone on a historical stone lifting tour probably had a super positive experience and would want it for, their friends, their brothers, their sisters, their children, right? Because this stuff's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And in light of and in recognition of the fact that we spend a lot of time talking about this stuff, and unfortunately,
maybe too much, but certainly a lot.
But when you spend a ton of time talking about things, your opinions bleed into what you're talking about, and we try to come at things with a sense of measure, and we try not to imprint our personal values and our personal opinions too much on the discussions we're having, especially when we're talking to guests, right? It's about sharing their story, not telling them and having them take on board whatever our story may be as it applies to the topic at hand.
Right.
And when it comes to putting our posts, like a lot of the times, we do hot topics and things like that, where we're saying, we feel one way about these things. We are not the gold standard for the ethics or excellence when it comes to lifting historical stones. Let's hear from the community. In some of the posts that we've put out recently, a lot of people are saying, well, shut up with your opinions. You are the self-assigned authority of stone lifting, blah, 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 blah.
One or two people have said that.
And it was one guy multiple times. He's done it to a whole bunch of other people's posts. Didn't have the intestinal fortitude to respond, which is fine. I'll just leave it at that.
He's a twat.
But we did see it too on the post about the Brock Lesnar thing, right? People saying like, oh, the masters of stone have spoken. This is how you must treat stones. So anyways, in light of that accusation, the fact that we know that we're just two people in a greater stone lifting community, this is a bit of a call to action. Now, there are a lot of people in the community that are doing so much to actually preserve the physical stones, support repairing of them, shoot incredible documentaries, take part in incredible documentaries, get the information out there to who really needs to see it, which in the most part are new lifters. There are experienced lifters that just by way of selfish intent and ego are going to treat the stones however they want, regardless of the information put in front of them. So it's really about those new lifters that are joining the community day after day after day. We, and I'm sure everyone else will agree, we all want them to understand how to go about lifting historical stone before they even stand in front of one and put their hands on it. And so what this call to action is, and there will be a post to follow this within the coming weeks where I'm hoping you can share your ideas, is to brainstorm what are things that you can be doing, small, meaningful things that you as an individual in this community can be doing to help try to highlight, especially when it comes to historical stones, the importance of the stone before the importance of the lifting of the stone. Is it a couple sentence blurb at the beginning of the description of your post where you talk about the history of the stone before, how incredible and understandably meaningful it was for you to travel there and be able to achieve the feat of strength associated with that stone, or be able to take part in the lifting of that stone because it's ancestrally significant, whatever the things may be, just making sure that it is the history of the stone that is front and center. Something I've thought about and I'm going to take on board going forward is putting a disclaimer, like maybe it's a couple of asterisks, and at the beginning of your description is lift of a training stone, lift of a modern stone, lift of a historical stone, so that when people find the videos of you lifting stones, they can distinguish right away, okay, so in this video, this person's dropping a stone from chest, but it's quite clear this is a training stone. This is not them lifting a piece of cultural history, right? Maybe it's at a point where people in the community need to come together and devise some sort of overarching guiding principles. And it's an unbranded post that people share on and pin in their Instagram page that talks about maybe like the 5 basic expectations for how to do historical stone lifting, so that when people find their videos, they also can find that information readily. Anyways, those are just 3 ideas off the top of the dome that I think could help. Whether or not other people think the same, I don't know, which is why, we understand that we come at this from a very specific viewpoint. We put out to the community to get additional input because there's so many wonderful people that probably think about this practice and are involved in it more than we are.
Oh, absolutely.
And they may have their own unique ideas or even just broader ideas that the community can take on board to maybe just try to move the needle a little bit. And that is, for the most part, for all of us who cannot physically put our hands on the stones on a weekly basis and do stone tours to help introduce people on how to do this the right way, information is such an asset, and I think that we can all be doing a better job of actually wielding information.
Yeah, and one big thing that I don't think of how to word this properly, but these can be very passionate topics because there are people just like us that are super involved in this, people that are more involved in us and much more involved actually in certain aspects. And I think that we need to be able to go back to a point where we can actually just have conversation about this. That's one thing. Like when I see somebody dropping the stones in the display we were discussing about, like that really rattles me, and it always will. But I also can disagree with people that I respect on certain practices, and that doesn't make me like them any less, have any less respect. Because if you look at the greater historical stone lifting community, we can all agree that these stones shouldn't be damaged, right? And by not damaging them, it means treating them physically with respect. Now, some people may think that you should be able to lift it to as high of a level as you can. Some people think that you should only be able to lift it to whatever was done historically. And we may not agree on that, but we should still have the same amount of respect, and that shouldn't be a fight. I truthfully, in my experience and all this, because obviously we talk about this a lot, is the only people that say things like this is just a rock, chill out, are the people who haven't actually lifted historical stones. I can't think of, in all the conversations over all the years, anybody who's gone, spent the time, done the research, spent the money to go lift a historical stone that has come out of that experience with, this is just a rock.
Just replace the Fiona stone if it's broken, and that's fine.
And that's not to say whatsoever that if you don't lift historical stones, your opinion doesn't matter. We lift, some of our best buddies that we lift with have no plans to lift historical stones, and they are some of the most passionate and strong lifters there are. They're phenomenal. And it's not saying you have to go do that. But maybe if you don't have any intentions of going to do the specific thing we're discussing, then maybe just focus on what you're doing, right?
Yeah, no, it's true. And I think a lot of it too, like you said, a lot of people say, like, lift it how you want, just don't damage it. So at the end of the day, and we talked about this after we put out what turned to be a fairly controversial and divisive hot topic, which is kind of what the intent of those is.
It was the intent.
Let's air out the different viewpoints people have, and maybe we can come to some common ground. And in that instance, it was about historical stones should only be lifted within the tradition of how they were historically. Right. There were two very distinct camps, more people in favor of the idea that you need to lift it within the, historical sense of how it was lifted. Other people saying, lift it however you want. But do it with respect. But do it with respect and don't damage the stone, right?
And there was a third little party that would say it's just a rock.
It was like clicks and likes, stones are for Instagram or whatever the hell it was, just to.
But some of the comments, some people felt it's just a rock, chill out.
And so for the people who say, just lift it to the extent you want to, what we had put in the intro of the podcast following that was, it all comes down to risk tolerance, and your risk tolerance is informed by your life experience. So if you are someone who is incredibly sure that you can go and overhead press the inverse stone, and when you do your risk matrix, you go, there's a very low risk of incidents. I'm comfortable with that level of risk. I'm going to go do it. That is totally fine. And that is on you as an individual to make that call. The issue or the word of caution is that when we make decisions, we also need to be fully understanding and accepting of the repercussions of those decisions. Right. So though you may think there's a very small potential for you to drop the inverse stone, and even smaller, minute potential for the inverse stone to break upon being dropped, you still need to understand and take on board the fact that the higher you lift a stone, the higher likelihood of damage to that stone should something go wrong. And we all hope nothing goes wrong. But as I've said before, I've been walking my entire life. I still trip sometimes. Every time I go for a walk, I have to understand and assess the risks of where I'm walking, how far I'm walking. I might fall. If I fall, what are the repercussions? So again, everyone listening to this has heard us talk about this all the time and are probably sick of hearing us talk about it, but it seems to be a topic that we need to keep coming back to because those instances of poor behavior
they're not slowing down,
are becoming more prevalent.
It ain't slowing down. And and I guess the one thing, and again, this is, and I don't mean to keep delaying on this, is just because most people are sharing their lifts online, which is awesome because that's how we get to interact with people, how we get to see stuff is other people will see your gifts. And that is why if you really care about this stuff, like if you can lift the stone if you feel that you should lift the historical stone to the highest of your capability, that's your opinion. And we're not telling anybody anything. We relay our points of view, just like you relay yours. Just when you do it, just do it with the most amount of respect. So if somebody does want to play copycat, they can at least say, I saw whoever do this. Wow, they set that down slow. Deadly. That's what we're supposed to do. It's just lead by example, right?
Luke Stoltman, one of the strongest human beings in the world, goes to overhead press the Ardvik stone, and he has 3 crash mats. 3 crash mats in case something went wrong, right?
Awesome.
He had multiple exit plans. Now, are we saying go and try and overhead? No,
because you're Luke Stoltman.
Unless you're Luke Stoltman, right? And even then, he had the wherewithal to have some physical mitigation to prevent damage.
I think the reason that Luke stands out in particular with that feat is because he's a professional strongman. And unfortunately, we have seen, time and time again, and I'm sorry, strongman athletes, but there's a reality that I think there's maybe a little bit of removal from the history for some of them. They are seeing it purely as a feat of strength that goes back in time, but not appreciating it as much. Or an opportunity as well. That's very
in competition or outside, right?
Yeah, because we see it in competition, the Husfeld being chucked over and over again, and it's very difficult to watch. And so I think a lot of times some professional strength athletes come at it from that point of here's another way to show how strong I am. And what's too bad about that is because people have a strength bias where it's almost like the stronger somebody is, the more people look up to them, which means the more they tend to think that they know what they're doing, right? Where that is not the case.
Or people tend to respect
is probably a better way. They want to emulate the strongest,
doing, right?
Especially in a strength field, which is what we're at, right? But and we unfortunately see that a lot. And so it's great to see that Luke is at least when he's choosing to make such a massive feat, he's taking the precautions needed. And I mean, there are exceptions to the rule, like there always is. And, we've had one of them on this podcast, and a friend of ours, Sandra Bradley, is the best example of both worlds come together.
When you want to talk about someone who strength of character, strength of morals, strength of body, like that's the person who you should set as your North Star when you want to try to use a strength athlete as an example of how to model your behavior and your interaction with historical stones. we'll come back to it every time. Sandra is
Sandra's
the person.
unreal.
We hugely look up to her because she's deserving of that level of respect.
Oh, absolutely.
So to circle back to the community and the call to action for the community to bring forth ideas on how we can all meaningfully try to move the needle on getting the information of the importance of preserving and respecting the history of these stones. This week's Community Corner is about developing community in the absence of having historical stones to go and lift. And when you look at blueprints like the one set out by the Utah Stones of Strength or New England Stone Lifting, you're bringing people in and supporting behavior that is the exact kind of thing that most people would hope to see from individuals, but also how individuals interact with the stone lifting community and how individuals go about lifting stones. So in this instance, we wanted to highlight a growing stone lifting group in Bulgaria, which is just so cool. And you'll hear in this saying, like one of the members of the community in Bulgaria went to the Commando Temple to lift with Beowulf Ben and the folks there, like just the amazing interconnectivity of the stone lifting community and how what happens in one place isn't just done in isolation. It's either physically brought, the culture, expectations, behavior to other places, or through Instagram, people see the social media. And so a gentleman named Lubomir, who goes by Snek on Instagram, he's helped develop this incredible stone lifting collective in Bulgaria. And on June 6th, they are hosting their first ever stone lifting competition.
Awesome.
So without further ado, our community corner for this episode, Lubomir and the Bulgarian Modern Stones of Strength.
Hey guys, my name is Lubomir at Snek1 on Instagram, and I'm from Plovdiv in Bulgaria. Many people in the community follow the boys from here, but you probably don't know how it all started. Stone lifting for me began during the pandemic, as it did for many others. Now, when they said that the gyms were going to be closed for a while, I decided I would need some backyard weights to keep my strength up. So I got 2 stones, 35 and 73 kilos. Now, I was hooked on Zorchers and other odd barbell lifts at that point, so stones just felt right. I knew basically nothing about proper technique or the community at all, so I just squatted and rolled and did some of the basic stuff with them. This was, however, just a lockdown phase as gyms opened up soon and I left the stones in the yard and only rarely lifted them afterwards. Around the start of 2025, we started hanging out in my place with some friends more and more. So one of the guys welded up an arm wrestling table and we started lifting the stones again too. Now, one fateful day, I saw a post of Matt Jones. Shout out to Matt Jones. He was lifting some heavy stone, so I followed him and got into the rabbit hole of the stone lifting community on Instagram. I found out about the podcast, listened through all the episodes, just watched all the big YouTube videos about it, and I was very hyped up. I decided I would need a very heavy stone, so I messaged a friend and we went on a absolutely crazy adventure for it, which is too long to tell right now, but we managed to bring a 130 kilo stone in the yard, which I couldn't even get wind under, even with a belt, it would not move. That was the first spark for me, as it was the first stone that put me in my rightful place. I started looking up techniques and got around to training to get stronger for stones, and I eventually managed to lap it the next month. Some close friends and some boys from the gym I went to used to basically come twice a month at that point on a weekend day to lift and drink beers and just talk about life. Then Konstantin, who I know from high school and is a personal trainer in a local gym on Instagram as @ILiftStones_for_fun, saw a story of mine and asked to join. He came next week and was the first person who lapped the 130 first try, and that absolutely blew my mind at the time. He managed to chest it the next month and immediately got hooked. Over time, as we got better and stronger, we brought over more river stones and built a training stone collection, which basically started a small friend community around it. Now, in the last months of 2025, Christian, @ChristianDalchev on Instagram, who competes on local strongman competitions and is the strongest aviation engineer in Bulgaria, saw our post and asked to join. He blasted through all the stones, almost shouldering the 130 kilos on his second session, which was absolutely bonkers, and became a regular too. This year has been the first proper time we have been doing stone lifting on a weekly basis or even a few times a week. Now we bought some sandbags and we constantly search for new and heavier stones, and more people are becoming regulars. Sorry if I can't mention them all, but you can find them on the profile at plovdiv.stonelifting. Now, anyways, one day Christian asks us if we want to set up a competition, as he knows all the local strongman event organizers, and of course we agree. So on the 6th of June, the first stone lifting competition in Bulgaria will happen, which we will post clips of on the page. This month, Konstantin went over to Commander Temple in London to lift with Beowulf Ben, and he managed to chest the 151 on his second attempt, and even lapped the 183, which, from what he told me, only a few people have ever achieved, so we are very proud of his overseas performance. Now we are definitely looking to lift some historic stones in the future too. So back to Bulgaria, we have a couple of regular stone lifting spots in and around the city with stones that we have weighed, and we are planning to set up a place for people to go and lift freely. And so far, this has been it. From what I know, only we are lifting stones in Bulgaria. So if anyone from here listens to the podcast, please reach out and come lift with us. We'll be very happy to greet you. We're very happy to be part of this worldwide community, and we're hoping to place Bulgaria on the map as a place where a tough stone can be lifted. And as a final, I want to thank Dave and Dale from the podcast for inviting me to speak about our adventure and for giving their best to spread the seeds of the stone lifting community globally. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lubomir. Thank you for reaching out, and thank you for sharing with all the listeners what awesome work you and your friends are doing in Bulgaria to help bring this historically connected practice to there and start your own history going forward. So when it comes to history, a lot of what we do focuses on historical lifting stones. Now, you know, John Shears, awesome guy. We had the chance to meet at the home games last year, has a wonderful podcast, which you should check out, called the Stone Lore Podcast.
It
that
is
focuses
great.
on historical lifting stones, but other historically significant stones, rune stones, like all the sort. He does a wonderful job. And in the chat with Gísli, and after the fact, he's continued to provide information. Dave's got some cool things about how, especially, it can become confusing when you're looking to try to locate it. Historically significant stones. Maybe you're looking for a lifting stone, but maybe it's something entirely different.
Yeah, so we've just got a number of stones. Gísli kindly sent an email with some of the different types of stones, and he's obviously, he speaks the Icelandic language, so he's excellent at breaking it down for simpletons like myself. But I can't even pronounce these words. But the Alf Konstein, is that fair enough to say?
Yep.
So Alf meaning elf, Kanu meaning woman, and Stein meaning stone. And so meaning a stone where a female elf lives. So you may see the word of Konstein and think it's a lifting stone, but then you go there and it's actually a very historically significant stone because it's the elf stones, which I believe he discusses in the podcast, right? And so he'd send us a picture of that.
Don't tamper with them.
You're going to be cursed.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. Another one is, I'm going to let you take a swing at that because you're better at this.
And we should also clarify, and I know Nick Whalen went over this in the podcast we had with him, is that in Iceland, the language is very descriptive. They use very descriptive, joining of words. It's the female elf stone.
Yeah.
And so this one is South Lauksdalr.
That was good.
Thank you.
Yep. And so this is a stone where they would lay coffins when they were carrying it from the seashore into the cemetery. So, they have these in coffin roads in Scotland. So they had a specific name for it in Iceland. There was also the Stapastein. That is a big stone where people said goodbye, but had a glass of schnapps. So it's literally the schnapps stone, which is awesome. I'll meet you at the schnapps stone. We'll have a drink and then see you later.
Well, it's such a cool idea to think.
It's great.
I like that they develop these landmarks where you say, like, I'm going to meet you at the McDonald's on 105th because you're about to go on your trip to Thailand. We'll see you there. Whereas there, it's like, I'm going to meet you at the schnapps stone. We're going to have a toast to you and your health, and then you're going to go
on the
wherever
way.
you're going to go. Yeah.
And then this one was quite cool, is the Galgastein. That's good enough. Galgastein. Yep. It was a stone that is divided into two, and a log could be placed between them to hang men. So it was quite literally a gallows stone, which is wild.
So don't go and tamper with the Alf Konstein, or you might end up on the Galgastein.
Yep.
You've been warned. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the Vinstein, which is just a pen related to drinking wine or alcohol during herding sheep. So just really cool. Again, thank you to Gísli for everything you sent over, and just also for highlighting the different ways that stones were a part of the Icelandic culture.
Yeah. So without further ado, our guest for episode 27 of the Stones of Strength podcast, Gísli Már Gíslason. Welcome to episode 27 of the Stones of Strength podcast, where we are incredibly excited to have our guest on. So, Gísli, I'll finish the introduction, but it's pretty cool. You're actually the first Icelandic guest that we've had on, and it's awesome because you're able to come at this from a place of being almost strictly on the research side of things versus a lot of our guests are fairly well entrenched into the strength world. So, Gísli Már Gíslason, thank you so much for joining us. If you wouldn't mind just doing a quick introduction, maybe letting people know, your upbringing, where were you born, where are you from, and then sort of we can move along into how you came to be so involved in finding, researching, being a steward of stones of strength, historical stones of strength in Iceland.
Well, I was actually born in Reykjavik in 1950, but at the age of 3, I was sent to my grandparents at Latra for upbringing because my mother was hospitalized for years. So I and my sister, we were sent there. We stayed there from 53 continuously to 55, and then every summer from May to September or October until 1964. So this is the period I was at Latra, and then I moved back to Reykjavik for further education and university education.
Oh, excellent. And when you speak about university education, I mean, it was an extensive education because you hold a PhD in limnology. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, I have a bachelor's degree from the University of Iceland, and I also have a diploma degree in marine biology from the University of Iceland. Then I have a PhD degree from the University of Newcastle upon Tyne in England.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So, and this is going to be a really interesting discussion because there's a lot of information that you're going to share with us and with the Stoneleaf community that very few people, if anybody else, and especially anyone listening, is going to know. It's also kind of exciting for us because based on your preliminary discussion that you had with Dave when the two of you first connected, you're not really aware of the fact that there is this sort of broader stonelifting community across the world, many of which have been to or are planning to go and lift the historical stones on Iceland. So it's going to be a really cool sort of sharing of back and forth and opening of doors for us. So,
no, I wasn't aware of it, but I had seen, because I stay a lot of time in Latra. Yeah. And after I retired from the university, I'm now a professor emeritus of the University of Iceland. I moved back to the area, so I now live in Patreksfjörður, which is the next urban area to that countryside. So I go there quite often. It's only 60 kilometers away, and I spend always at least 1 to 2 weeks continuously at Latra every summer, and sometimes I go over weekends in the winter. And it's only recently I've seen people come and they try to lift the stones. And I usually thought because since children of the age of confirmation, was about 14, 15, were supposed to be able to lift at least the lightest stone. Could be on half share of the fishing, which is a bit complicated how the salaries were calculated by the salaries of the fishermen. And until they could, so they were always trying to lift the stone that would allow them to have a full share of the catch. So the people know about these stones. They come and I saw an odd person lifting them, but not many when I was a child. Because when I was a child, there wasn't even a road to the place, so there weren't many visitors. Right? But now there are. But I came across. I was asked to guide an Irishman, Daniel
Byrne, is that correct?
Byrne, yes, yeah. A lawyer from Ireland, last summer, and I was surprised. His only thing he wanted to see was to get to the stones and try his strength on them. And I believe he's coming back now on the 29th and going to do it again. And then when we were working on the stone lifting, and he took a pause, and I met a friend of mine who was working on the lighthouse, was repairing a mason, and he had a video of Scotsmen coming in the kilts and lifting the stones.
Yeah.
And they did that very easily. And we had a video, and I showed Daniel these. And then I realized that apparently there had been several visits during the summers of people coming. And apparently this is a community, and Daniel told me about it.
Yeah.
And they share their knowledge and go to many places to lift
Many
stones.
places. Yeah,
we were there last summer. Same thing. Not in our kilts at some of the stones, but it's, an interesting. So one of the ways many people have gotten introduced into the stone lifting world, there's a fitness company called Rogue, and they make, they put on a lot of events, and a very, very sort of prominent strength apparel, strength equipment, and competition company. And they have curated some incredibly fantastic documentaries about 3 of the sort of more well-known stone lifting cultures in the world. So they did one on the Basque region of Spain, whereby stone lifting is essentially like their sport, right? Like here in Canada, everyone grows up playing hockey. There, they lift stones and do these outdoors related competitions, like wood cutting and things like that.
Rural sport, basically.
Rural sport, yeah, exactly. In Scotland, they did a documentary called Stoneland on the historical stones there, including the Dinnie stones. And they did one that is arguably maybe the most famous. It's called Fullsterkur, and is about the historical lifting stones of Iceland. And I just checked on YouTube. That video on YouTube, just the one iteration of that video, has nearly 800,000 views. So a lot of people know about the stones in Iceland, and the way they did the documentary, it was an equally beautiful celebration of the stones and the history of Iceland, but also of the countryside and the people that call Iceland home. So it did a beautiful job of sort of showing people a lot of where the strength history of Iceland and the strength of the Icelandic people has come from. So,
that's interesting to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of people's introduction to the concept of Fullsterkur, which you and I spoke about briefly on the phone. And I think that maybe it would be great if you wouldn't mind covering the concept here, because you have a lot of information on it. And the way you described it to me was, I thought, very, very telling. And so for some people may not fully understand the depths of the concept of Fullsterkur. So would you mind quickly just expanding on your knowledge of that?
Yes, I have my knowledge from the people. When I was living at Latra as a child and a teenager, when I came, there were about 40 people living there. And then the population declined, but still, the last time I actually lived there were at least 20 people there, and many of them were former seamen, because this was the people that lived on fishing, not so much on agriculture. Agriculture was just for subsistence, enough meat and milk for the family through the year. But fishing was the income, so they had these small boats, and I heard stories about these stones. And they are found in most places where there were a fishermen's congregation. So there are several places in Iceland, usually on these peninsulas. And in many of them, there are these stones of different weight where you tested your strength. And probably at all of them, but many of them are lost. And they were also then, and in this case, the share of the fishing, it was divided. First of all, is the boat has its share, probably half, and then the rest is divided between the foreman or the skipper, who has 2 shares, and then is a single share for every other member, and that is the value of the catch, which is the share. So if there were 7 in the crew, and one is the skipper, you'll have half to the boat, half of all the fishing income goes to the boat, and the rest is divided into 8 units or 8 to 8 persons, whereas the skipper gets 2 and the rest everyone gets 1. And to be able to go to sea, you had to be able to lift the lightest stone, which is amlóði, which is usually well below 100 kilos. And I believe you had the full share when you could lift the half-strong, Fullsterkur, which is somewhere above 120 kilos. And then people tested how strong they were on probably the others, and they were showing off. And at Latra, there are 4 stones like that on a kind of a stone that serves as a table.
Plinth, yeah.
And then is the 5th, which isn't for everyone to lift, and that is the klovi, which means cleft, because it has a kind of an arch where you could stand above it and put your hands underneath and lift it. And I don't know how heavy it is, but it is apparently well over 200 kilos. And then in Latra, there are also on the southern side of the bay, there was another fishing station with at least 14, 15 crews. And there are 2 stones there, but one is called Judas, because he couldn't stay in walls. People tried to use it in building their huts and the fishermen's huts, but these walls collapsed, because it's like an egg in shape. That is about 130 kilos. And that, if you could lift that, you were on full share in that fishing station.
That's a Fullsterkur stone, is Judas.
Yeah, Judas. And then it's the Brynjólfstak, that is 281 kilos. But that was a crew member called Brynjólfur from nearby area. And they were rowing in, and the weather was getting very bad, and the waves becoming that big was dangerous to row in, and then they rowed as fast as they could between the surfs or the waves. And the skipper told the Brynjólfur off. He said, you didn't do well enough. You should have rowed faster. And Brynjólfur got angry, and shortly afterwards, on a low tide, he went down onto the seashore and had people to lift the stone on his back and had it in ropes or belt and carried it on his back. This is 281 kilos. It's quite a weight. And he said to the skipper, I will be remembered by carrying the stone up to from the shore up to the bank, but your name will not be remembered at the same time when people remember mine, which is true. I don't know the name of the skipper.
I was about to say, yeah. I don't know the skipper's name either. Yeah, we know Brynjólfstak though. Yeah, he was right.
Yeah, he was he came from a Rauðisandur farmland, which is about 1 day's walk from Latra, and was living in the 19th century.
19th century. Okay, so he essentially was growing up as a farmer, but would walk a full day to Latra to get on these fishing boats to be able to bring.
Yeah, they stayed there in the fishermen's huts. Yes, they came on. You see, the boat. What happened is the farmers sent the laborers to work on boats.
Right. Okay.
And the farmers or the owner of the farms,
right,
also took their salaries. They didn't see it.
Okay.
That was also the case. But at Latra, every farmer there had their own boat, and they had crew members, both the sons and the younger men, but also from outside. And they, then they were paid after this rule, according to the rule for paying the salaries for selling the fish. And they were fishing cod. And cod was sold abroad, and that was the real value. And then they also fished the wolffish, and that was a home consumption. It's actually much better fish if we're eating, but that was dried and used. It's rather fat, so you may have seen there were a lot of these stone walls near these fishermen's homes, also where you were stone lifting, and they dried the fish on this. It was like hanging over, and people came, for instance, to Latra around Easter. And there, you see, there were probably an entire bay. There were well over 20 boats fishing. They were fishing from Brunnar, where the Djúpis is, and Brynjólfstak. This is in the south side of the bay. And then from the north side of the bay, where the actual farms are, and they were fishing from there. And the fishermen's huts were around the stones. Unfortunately, they were bulldozed into and cleared into the seashore. There was only one fisherman's hut on the northern side, which still exists, used for 2 crews, is now collapsing, and that's the ruins next to the pond. We must have passed on the way out there. Many of the outhouses, which are next to the sand, were also former fishermen's huts, but later used for keeping sheep.
Sheep,
Okay.
Interesting. There's a couple massive points we wanted to touch on there, because a lot of the people listening will have a cursory understanding of the history of Brynjólfstak and Judas and the Power Stones at Latra, but you provide a lot of new information, even the story about Brynjólfstak, and that he was getting reprimanded by the skipper, and this was sort of his revenge act was, I will carry the stone and be remembered, and you won't be, which has, come to pass. The fact that Judas stone is a Fullsterkur stone, I believe that's new information. It is for us, at least. And then Clophy, I think.
Clophy's big.
Yeah.
There are.
Yes, it's big.
Well, it's big in a number of senses. It's kind of very mysterious stone for the stone lifting community that at least we know, and the researchers that we know. So you actually are the individual, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the sign at Latra, at the Power Stones, was that you that curated that?
What do you mean by the signs by the stones?
Yes.
Yes, I wrote that.
Yes, yeah, and that's really, really cool, because so many people will be very familiar with that sign, and it's a great reference point, obviously, for the weight of the stones. But the concept of Clophy is almost like an urban myth in the stone lifting community, because so many people think that it's missing, that it's disappeared. Some people believe that it's actually, there's a stone on the one side underneath the plinth, a very large stone, and they think that that's Clophy buried down below. But you're saying that Clophy is actually there and close by.
Yeah. Yes, very close. I don't know. I actually haven't measured it. It's probably less than 100 meters from the stones. Probably 50 meters. It's a slight slope towards the pond, and it's there in the grass.
That's very exciting for us and a lot of people.
We thought about it to have used a kind of a shovel in front of a tractor, try to lift it and bring it back to the stones, but we never managed to do it. I and my friend that lived at Latra was the last resident and died in a car accident in 2021. But we always thought we would bring it back to there. Probably a big wave pushed it down towards the pond. In a part where the wave came in, over and pushed it towards the pond. If you come there, if you can lift it, you should bring it back to the rest.
Well, we know someone who's coming there very quickly, and if there's very few people on the planet that we would be confident could even lift that stone. His name is Liam Brown, and he is certainly one of those people. Everyone who goes, everyone take your time to try and roll it a couple turns closer. And that'll be like our version of the Legestine stone, where you have to do the full rotations to free the farmer. Let's roll Clothy back to its former home. So
okay.
So a question on Clothy, because all of the power stones there at Latra are to be lifted up onto the plinth. Is Clothy? Yes. You mentioned the cleft below it. Do you know if it was meant to be lifted onto the plinth, or just what's called a half lift, where you just pick it off the ground?
Just lift it high enough that water can flow underneath.
Okay,
the water can flow.
The water. That's cool. So in Scotland, it's called put wind beneath the stone.
Yeah.
And now you're saying the Icelandic version is to allow water to
wave beneath the stone.
Oh man, that's really cool.
Very cool. Something else that's very curious to me, and it's one of those things that I really respect a lot of these communities that have allowed these stones to persist, and they preserved them and looked after them. So you'd mentioned that a lot of the fishing huts that used to be around the stones in the plinth were bulldozed, but the stones were left alone. So that was a concerted effort by whoever was cleaning that land. They knew that even above the importance of these historical fishing huts, these stones are just far more valuable, far more of a cultural value to them.
Yes, the farmer, his name was Thordur, which I knew very well. This was done in the early 60s, you see. It's not maybe 60 years ago now, more than 60 years ago. But it was in the early 60s, and the farmer was extending his hay fields. So the fishermen's huts were just above the shoreline, and they stood there side by side, so you had the bulldozer to push them off. Except the big one for 2 crews next to the pond, because they were using that for sheep at the time.
Okay.
So there was some use of it, and therefore it wasn't bulldozed.
Yeah, fair enough.
Right. That's really cool. Yeah,
it's exciting to know that Clothy is there and putting water beneath the stone. I really like that.
That's just cool concept.
It's really cool.
Yeah. It just speaks to the environment that it was lifted in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. A lot of people like that.
So you'd mentioned then, so obviously the fishing, there was fishing village or fishing huts on the north side of the bay, but also on the south side of the bay. Were there was a series of stones there to be lifted to assess your physical
these 2 stones, Brynjólfstak and Judas.
And Judas, and those, and Judas was considered the Fullsterkur stone. Was there a certain name or achievement associated with lifting Brynjólfstak then?
No.
Okay.
And I've only seen people lifting it high enough that you can, float water.
He did it last year. Yeah. To get waved beneath the stone.
Yeah, it's a very awkward lift, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Now, with certain stones like Judas, was it to be lifted to chest, to shoulder? Was there any particular height that it was required?
Yes, you had to lift it and stand up to the chest. Stand straight and lift it up to the chest. Okay.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's a really nice stone to lift. Actually, it's a cool shape.
It's like a huge egg. You have to lift it on the narrower end and kind of take fathom it and lift. And lift it up.
We enjoyed that one.
Yeah. As a child then growing up and spending time in Latra, was there at that time, people going to test themselves in the stone like the local people? Would people got bored on a Saturday and they'd go over and see if they were strong enough to lift these stones? Like, was there any sort of community activities centered around these stones?
Yeah, it was. Every young man wanted to be able to lift as many as they possibly could. Okay. Awesome. And all young men from the age of 14, 15 were taking on the boats. At that time, the boats had been motorized. And they were, and this community lived on fishing. There were, when I was a child, the 3 to 4 boats that were rowing from the bay. They left mainly in the spring until July. And that's when very little was happening in the farming. They started hay cutting in early July, and that's when men had to go back to the farms and do that job. But all young men wanted to try these stones at the same time as they were confirmed, or they became 14. It was always considered in Iceland, you were a full-grown man after confirmation.
Okay.
And that's the age of 14, maybe 15 in some cases. So these young men who was living there, they tried it. I remember I was trying it as a young man.
Yeah. That's so interesting because it's, I mean, obviously fairly geographically similar if you're talking about on a global scale, but as far as the cultural purpose of these stones, so in Scotland, there are a number of stones across Scotland that are considered manhood stones that were used as a rite of passage for young men. So they could lift this stone. They were considered, physically capable enough to be men, to train with weapons, to, contribute on a farm. It's just interesting to see that organically there was an exact same purpose. Even after assessing strength for a ration on the fishing boats, there was that entry-level step of becoming a man by lifting these stones.
Yes, there is a stone like that you may have heard of at Húsafell, very much inland in Borgarfjörður in West Iceland.
Mm-hmm.
There is a stone there, and the first test is, can you lift it high enough that water can go underneath it?
Yeah.
The second test is, can you lift it onto a stone or a flat stone next to the gate into the pen? It's part of a pen for sheep. The third test is, can you walk around the pen with the stone? And then you are really strong, you see.
Yeah.
But it's only a single stone.
But it's actually the most famous lifting stone on the planet, that one. They've recreated the shape of Húsafell in strongman competitions all over the world. And we were both fortunate enough to not only lift it, but carry it a full lap without stopping or setting it down last summer.
So we did it last year. So it was David's 40th birthday, and his goal was he wanted to become Fullsterkur before 40. So we went to Iceland last year, and maybe it'd be helpful, we could even sort of explain. So the goal was to lift Húsafell, and we both managed to lift it and do a full walk around the pen with that stone. And then the next day we went to Drittvik to lift the stones there, and we're fortunate enough to lift all the way up to the Fullsterkur stone. Then we visited Leggestein, we visited Judas, Brynjolf Stack, the Power Stones of Latra, and then we went to Thakgil. Thakgil? So it's
by Vik. It's about half an hour from Vik. I mentioned it to you on the phone briefly where we saw that incredible, the geological phenomenon with the raven.
Yeah,
on the side of the mountain, which we'll send you a photo.
Yes. I remember. Yes, it's. Did you call it Djúpagil? Is it Djúpagil? No. What's the name of it?
It's almost like a P, sort of
Thakgil,
yes. But it's Thakgil, yeah.
It means a kind of it's a gil is often a causeway of rivers.
Yes,
but has been cutting it down very deep, and thak means a roof.
Oh,
thak.
Interesting.
So it's I haven't been there, but
beautiful.
Apparently some people have the feeling that it's a kind of at least in some places, some kind of shelter from maybe rain or something. I don't know. I've only seen it on pictures.
Yeah, the entire valley is sort of
I know where it is. It's just close to Vik. You could also have gone to Djúpalón, which is on Snæfellsnes Peninsula. Okay. Snæfellsnes Peninsula is the long, narrow peninsula going to west from the Westland in the sort of mid-Westland, south of Westfjords. And there is also an old fishing station, was quite big. Up to the total number of people there during the fishing season were up to 150. You can just imagine how big it was. And there are also stones. There are 3 stones. There's the Amlóði, which means the lightest one, and then is half strong, and then Hálfsterkur and Fullsterkur.
I think we stayed by there. We stayed in the area, I believe, if I remember correctly.
But I don't know that we were aware that there were
I'm not sure.
Just, I guess, a question off the top, because so Husafell is certainly the most famous of the Icelandic lifting stones, at least from an outsider's perspective. And then next is Drittvik, and that lifting
Djúpalón and Drittvik is the same. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so we did go to we lifted the stones there, and that is. Many people actually misconstrue the Drittvik Fullsterkur stone as being the only Fullsterkur test in Iceland. That's not true, and a lot of people do. But it is, when people say you're Fullsterkur, they always seem to associate it with lifting the stones at Drittvik there. So that's those are very difficult stones.
That is a very tough stone.
Yeah.
Last week I went hiking in the north of Iceland, in the area from Siglufjörður. Siglufjörður is one of the fjords in the very far north. Okay. It used to be known for his herring fishing. Okay. I was walking from there. I walked along through two ancient fishing stations, with rowing boats and fishermen's huts. And I couldn't find at these two places, I couldn't find any stones for lifting. And there was no history there of stone lifting. But that may be because the history of the fishing in these places isn't very well known. Mm-hmm. And so that maybe if there were any, they are lost now. There must have been, because there are in so many places, testing the strength of men before they go fishing.
It seems to be quite a bit of maybe not a universal, but it seems that those two concepts are directly linked in Iceland, is it not? Where there is a fishing village, that whether the stones are still there or not, it's very fair to say at one point there likely was tests of strength in the form of lifting stones.
Yes, and you see, the first settlers that came to Iceland, they couldn't have any big livestock, so they had to live on fishing and hunting, mm-hmm. While they were building up livestock. And I'm sure they brought the tradition with them from their homelands. And the homeland is, from genetical studies, that we know that over 80% of the men, which we can see on the gene on the Y chromosome, 80% of the men were Norwegian.
Okay.
But over 50% of the women were Celtic.
Interesting.
Okay, that's very interesting.
The reason is that Iceland was colonized by some directly from Norway, and they had Norwegian wives. The other half, or more than, were Vikings that were already living in the British Isles, mainly in Scotland and Ireland. And they were expelled from the British Isles. They were married to local women. They were Celtic of origin. And the tradition, they must have taken the tradition, this must have, the stone lifting, probably well known where they came from.
Mm-hmm. Very well known there.
Yeah.
And the last Vikings were expelled from Dublin in the year 1015, called the Battle of Boar. So that's well known. Yeah. So it's not surprising if you have, for instance, been living in you come to the British Isles as a young man and you find yourself a wife. The Vikings were not only going and attacking monasteries and churches and stealing and they were also tradesmen. They were trading and they were settling down. And they were settling down in the British Isles and were then later expelled. And there are a lot of place names with sound Icelandic in Orkney, Scotland and Ireland. Mm-hmm. And there are also Irish names here, both person names and places, which have been adjusted to Icelandic language, but of Celtic origin.
That's interesting. Not surprising, but also very, very interesting.
We've lifted historical stones in Scotland, and one of the historical stones we lifted is in the north of Scotland called the Strathmore of Durness, and it was apparently a stone in an area that was at sort of the confluence between the Vikings and local Pictish tribes, and there's a lifting stone there that is nearby a 2,000-year-old Pictish rock. So that it's interesting to see, there's the sharing of traditions, the sharing of genetics, and then that made its way back to Iceland and precipitated this stone lifting culture that was used as recently as you were saying, like in the 19th century to test their strength on the fishing boats.
Yes. Yeah. It is, yes.
So back to the West Fjords, how many sets of lifting stones at fishing villages are you aware of in that area?
Yes, there's one in Tálknafjörður, which is the next fjord north of Patreksfjord.
Okay.
There is one at Selátrar, wait a minute. What's it called? In Arnarfjörður, there's a dale which we're fishing from Selárdalur dale or Selárdalur valley. Dalur in Icelandic is the same as dale in English, means a valley.
My name is Dale. There you go.
D-A-L-U-R is in English D-A-L-E.
That's my name spelling, D-A-L-E, yeah. Man of the Valley, apparently.
Okay.
So,
yeah, and that's a valley. And there are stones there. I don't remember if there are any more, but I can send you a list of places with stones for stone lifting.
That would be fantastic.
That would be incredible because now I might be mistaken. I do not have the greatest memory out there, but I didn't realize that there was any lifting stones anywhere around. And this is close to Latra, you're saying?
Yes. The Tálknafjörður is only about 15-20 minutes drive from Patreksfjörður.
Yeah, I don't know that anyone...
Arnarfjörður is out to Selárdalur valley. It would take you probably an hour to hour and a half to drive.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely don't think that that's well known. No. And very exciting.
Yeah, it would be wonderful. There's a gentleman named James Graham who's a Scottish stone lifter, and he curates a website called Old Man of the Stones, and it has an interactive map that has the locations of historical lifting stones in Scotland, England, Ireland, Iceland, and it would be wonderful if you could provide us with some of the resources you have so that we can make sure that these stones are put out there for anyone who's interested in coming to lift them. But one thing that, and it's become a very, very prominent topic in the stone lifting community, I mean, not just in Iceland, but anywhere where people go to lift historical stones, is the fact that you need to be going there and treating not only the stones, but the community, the environment that these stones are resting in with respect. You're a guest, you need to be conducting yourself as such, going in there, leaving, you're not leaving garbage, you're leaving the stone where you found it in the condition you found it. And so I don't know if this is something that's really available to you with those stones, or maybe, we can figure this out, but just to understand too, which of these stones are open and accessible to the public, and which of them, there may be private land access that needs to be discussed. We just want to make sure that if people are becoming aware of these stones and going to visit them, they're following all the required protocols to make sure that they're respecting the stones, the landowners, the community, that sort of thing.
In those cases, I know there's a public access.
Public
Even
access.
Even at Latra, it's within a fence, but you are allowed to walk through fenced land if you use the gates.
Interesting. Okay.
All right.
And the seashore is always open to the public.
Okay.
By law.
Right.
You are not allowed to fence off the seashore or lake shores. Or rivers. The banks are public.
Yeah. Okay.
So you can always hike along the seashore.
Right. Yeah.
That's amazing.
When we went to Latra, we kind of walked around the community to find someone. We talked to a gentleman who's saying, it's essentially, and maybe you can correct if their interpretation we got was wrong, but that it is communal ownership of the fishing village now. And for the most part, it is it's there's summer homes for people. They come and they spend their
I have
summer
a house
there.
there.
Right. So you have a house there. And so, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So we walked the seashore and got attacked by birds to get to the power stones of Latra. So, yeah.
No, if you don't want to go through the fenced area, you can walk along the seashore to the area. And that's open to the public. It's not far. It's about 10-15 minutes walk if you take it from the road. But when I took Daniel, we drove there along a path, a track or a pathway.
Yeah, there's the track there. Okay.
No, that's great. It's really exciting to note there are other stones that the broader stone lifting community might not be aware of, not only in Iceland, but particularly in the West Fjords near Latra, because Latra is a very, very it's an important and a very intriguing destination for a lot of people. Understanding that Klofi is there, that's super exciting. And I was wondering, because some of the gentlemen that we've talked to on this podcast that have researched Icelandic lifting stones, traveled to Iceland multiple times, scoured valleys and areas to find these lifting stones, they were working off of a very limited set of information. They would find historical articles, book references, newspaper clippings, that sort of things. What is the primary source of information that you use to get a better understanding of the presence and location of some of these historical lifting stones?
There is, first of all, these books, the five volumes by Ludwig Kristjánsson. He wrote about all these, fishing habits, type of fishing boats, fishing villages or the fisherman's hut on the peninsulas, closer to the fishing banks. And he collected all the knowledge he could, gain or obtain on the use of the sea for fishing and also for seabirds, climbing in cliffs and catching seabirds or collecting eggs. And that's would be my primary source of information.
Very cool.
The second one is this small article that Svavar Sigmundsson wrote. He actually passed away a couple of weeks ago. And he wrote and named all the places where he had found mentioned lifting stones or for testing your strength. And and that is on a website for a university institute that actually collects names of places and puts them on the map, so they don't get lost. And he took the information from there.
Wow.
This is something I can send you.
Map these locations.
It's in Icelandic, but I have a brief translation I sent to Daniel Byrne last autumn after being here in Iceland. I made a translation of the part that concerned Latra. And you would also like to know what Latra means. What the name Latra, which you call also in short is Latra.
Yeah. Okay.
Hvalur is a whale, and Látur is a birthplace. But obviously, whales today they have their offspring out in the sea. But walrus means the old name in Icelandic was Roskvalur, which is the same as walrus. You turned it all the way around. A whale is a whale's name. It's a whale.
Okay. Interesting.
So at the time of settlement, this was a place where walruses were having their cubs.
Interesting.
Oh, really?
Interesting.
And that's where the name comes from.
Yeah.
The name. Okay, that is cool.
We didn't see any walruses, but when we were actually hiking to Dritvik Beach, we saw a pod of killer whales off the shore when we were hiking, which was really exciting to see. It was a pretty cool experience, that's for sure.
It is. And we still have visits of walruses from Greenland. But
really?
Apparently at the time of settlement, there were walruses, where they had the cups. In most of the, in many of the isles in the Breiðafjörður Bay, the big bay, and there is also another Hvallátur there, which is an island. And also in several places in Iceland there were walruses. We find walrus tusks in the sand at Latra. And also in Breiðavik Bay, the next bay north of it. Yeah. And it's been found all over Iceland. And apparently it was exterminated probably very quickly. But they were hunted, and the tusk was sold to the church. It was used to ornament and for the bagels. And that what made the Greenland community also very rich. While the Icelandic or the Norse settlement, Greenland was settled from Iceland. Though Erik the Red was born in Norway, he was a farmer in Iceland, and he was actually outlawed. He went with 25 boats to Greenland and settled Greenland. And that community survived at the Norse community for 500 years, or nearly 500 years. And the main income was selling skins that were used for ropes on sailing boats and for tusks.
Okay.
And when the elephant bones came from Africa around 1500 through Venice, that stopped from Greenland. It became too expensive to catch it from Greenland.
Okay, interesting.
And also, apparently, the Russians filled the market of cheap, inexpensive skins in the 15th century, which also made it difficult to sell walrus skins and seal skins from Greenland. That may be part of the collapse of the Norse settlement there. Because apparently they went on after 1500.
It was Erik the Red that colonized Greenland, and I'm guessing this is the same Erik the Red that first made landfall in Canada on the East Coast?
Erik the Red didn't make didn't go to Canada. It was his son, Leifur.
Right.
Okay. Right.
Leifur the Lucky.
That was in Yarmouth, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And Thorfinnur Karlsefni. They settled in Nova Scotia, and the settlement has been found, and it's described in the Greenland saga and also the saga of Erik the Red. It was Erik's the son, the Leifur, and Thorfinnur Karlsefni. And Thorfinn's wife returned to Iceland, and probably most traveled woman in the Middle Ages, because after that she traveled to Rome to meet the Pope.
Wow.
Yeah, no
it's
kidding.
Extremely well traveled.
We often hear about Icelandic lifting stones. People misconstrue an association with Vikings and Viking culture. People say, you lift Fullsterkur, Viking power and all these other kind of things. And it seems to be maybe a co-opting of that title. And there's a lot of pop culture excitement around Vikings and things like that. Are you aware of any references in Viking lore and any of the sagas to actually lifting stones?
Yes, it's one of the sagas called Grettis saga, the Grettir the Strong. He was apparently, he was testing his own strength. But there are a lot of Grettis tags in Iceland. A tag means what you would take up or lift. And some of them are huge, huge stones that no one can lift. They're just, almost every stone that stands independently out of standing out is named after Grettir. And often they're just called Grettis tök, just describing a big stone individually standing out of the ground.
Interesting.
Nothing with Grettir. But I can't remember I've read all of the sagas. I can't remember have I ever come across this testing. But I know there is one of the competition called Vestfjarða Víkingur, the Westfjord Viking. And what they do, they quite often, not every summer, but it's every summer this competition, but sometimes they come out to Latra to lift Brynjarstak and Jutas.
Yeah.
And test the strength of that, and then they go between places in Westfjord and test the strength.
Yeah.
That is a competition. There is not only Icelanders, there are others, strong men. Usually, they're testing on different objects, and when in ordinary, like they do in the gym, they have these natural stones or others to test the strength on.
Yeah.
And there is similar in Scotland competitions like that.
Yeah.
Strongest man in the world, etc.
Yes, yeah. Familiar with that one. Just one thing that we really like to address on this podcast with the rise in popularity of historical lifting stones and a lot of people coming from all over the world sometimes to test their strength is we like to discuss not only, as Dale mentioned earlier, the respect of the stone and the land. We like to talk about respecting the traditions, but the actual physical stone itself. We're of the opinion, and there's a certain group of people in the stone community, that you shouldn't be dropping these historical stones from chest height, that you should be setting it down as gently as possible in order to continue that tradition on, because stones do break. People think that they're invincible, but they break, and it happens. There's the William Wallace pudding stone in Scotland was broken. It's been repaired since, but just curious of not only a researcher, but from an Icelandic man, what is your opinion on how these stones should be treated, lifted, and set down?
Well, I believe you should do it as gently as possible to avoid any, to avoid the breaking off or breaking a piece off them. Because if you drop them, there may be stone underneath. It's not always grassland. Mm-hmm. So I believe you should be careful when you drop them to the ground.
It's good to hear.
It's congruent with how we feel as well. And one of the things that we always try to bring, people's attention to is the fact that you may drop a stone and there may not be visible damage or visible to your eye, but especially in cold climates and places like Iceland where you get these freeze-thaw cycles, the potential for frost wedging and damage of the stone is incredibly high. So you need to do everything you can to mitigate even creating those kind of microfractures, because it may not be a broken stone today, but dropping it could make it a broken stone in 10 years, 20 years, maybe 100 years. But it just, it's do everything you can to take part in the tradition and not be the one that the tradition stops with because you've broken a stone. So, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing to be able to talk to someone who grew up around these stones that many of us from overseas are, so intrigued by. Like we said, we went last year, and the whole premise of his 40th birthday celebration was to go and lift these historical stones in Iceland. Are you aware in the communities, is there still, some remnants of that lifting culture where young men are going to test themselves on these stones?
Well, I know of Icelanders that have tried the strength on these stones and visiting Latra, but they're often visiting Latra for other purpose. They're going to the bird cliff. That's the most popular spot. Okay. And that's a tourist attraction, going to the bird cliff. This is the biggest bird cliff in Europe. There are nearly 1 million pairs of birds nesting in the cliff.
Holy smokes.
That's something, you see.
Yeah.
And that cliff was harvested and still harvested. I believe they are taking something like 15 to 20,000 eggs every spring from this cliff. And that's sold commercially in the supermarkets.
Interesting.
And also eaten by the locals.
Yeah, of course.
I always feel it's spring. It's the beginning of summer is having guillemot eggs, or you call it murr eggs, common murr. Their eggs, and also the razorbill eggs. And they are delicious. That's the beginning of summer.
That's it. That's it's summertime when the eggs are ready.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And then we'll be starting harvesting the eggs at Latra Bear Cliff in around 20th to 25th of May, just in a few days.
Okay.
Okay, it's about to fire up.
And it's usually, if it's a calm sea, they usually go on rubber dinghies or boats underneath the cliff and take the eggs from the landslides and also from the ledges, which you can go up to from the seashore, where there is a seashore underneath.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have to drive the boat up to the cliff and they jump onto a ledge and begin the climb. This is not very much, even 20,000 eggs. When you consider that guillemot or the common merg population and the Burnish guillemot or the Burnish murr and razorbills, these are the three species where they take the eggs from. They are about over 500,000 pairs, about 600,000.
That's a lot.
And about half of the razorbill population in the world nest in this cliff.
Holy smokes! Oh.
So this is a very important bird area as well, and that attracts tourists and attracts bird watchers and over to the area. Yeah. They are not they are not thinking about the stones. They probably don't know about them. But some people do, especially Icelanders, and they often, as they were visiting the site, they may test the strength on the stones at, in the northern part of the bay, where you were, or even Jutas. Yeah. There are not many people who have seen lifting Brynjólfstak. One of them was at one time the strongest man in the world, Hjalti. He is actually descended from Latra. So he stays there in a summer house, and he was testing his strength once from Brynjólfstak. He took it and lifted it. I wouldn't even try. It may fall over me and I would suffocate.
It's an interesting lift.
You had mentioned a map that I don't know if it's a friend or a colleague had put together to make sure like the presence, the location of these historical stones is documented, and it's on a universe. Is that a publication that is readily accessible? Like if you were able to provide us with that information, can we access that map?
Yes, I can actually. I can send it to you. Yes,
that'd be fantastic.
It's in Icelandic. I know some stone lifters know about it, but Daniel did. Mm-hmm. He had come across it and had it translated. We'll see see if I can. I have it here.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. It would just be very interesting to compare and contrast the known locations of Icelandic historical lifting stones on the various websites with what is on that map to see, how many, if any, stones there are that people may not be aware of.
There might be some gaps for sure.
Yes, I'm looking here in Tálknafjörður, in Arnarstapavík, on the north shore of Tálknafjörður, further west than the village. You probably have to walk some distance to get to that bay. Vík means a bay. That's what it does. And there are three stones. It's Fullsterkur, Miðlungur, Aumingi. Fullsterkur is full strength. Miðlungur is the middle, just means the middle stone. And Aumingi means someone who is a person that can't do anything.
Yeah.
And then it's in Selardalur, as I told you. There were stones, and they were three as well. They were Fullsterkur, Hálfsterkur, half strength, and Aumingi, which also means useless person. And and they appeared in a list of names of places. So that should be found near the seashore. Then in Fjallaskaginn, Dýrafjörður. Dýrafjörður is also one of the fjords in Westfjord. There was a fishing, fishing village or fisherman's hut gathering on the northern shore of the fjord, and you have to go there by boat from Þingeyri. Oh, okay. And some of the fishing huts are still standing because they were used into the 1950s. And there are 4 stones: there's Fullsterkur, Hálfsterkur, Amlóði, and Aumingi, the useless. And
so this is an area that's accessible.
And they say in that case there were very few that could lift fullsterkur, full strength. Or he said to láta vatna, letting water flow underneath. Mm-hmm. And then
to confirm, that area is only accessible by boat. Is that correct?
Yes. It's only accessible by boat. Or you can walk. It will probably take you from the nearest farm. You can walk there. There is no road. We walk on the slopes of a mountain most of the way, or along the seashore. It's probably 15 or 20 kilometers.
Okay.
Wow.
So these are very remote. And they're also and then in the east of Iceland is an island called Seley, or the Seal Island. Reyðarfjörður is in the very east. It has a big town, and the island was a kind of the fisherman's hut because that was close to the fishing grounds. Mm-hmm. And there they have 3 stones for testing the strength. One is called Hrúturinn, which means the ram.
The ram. Okay.
One was called the Ærin, which means the ewe, and then there's the lightest one was called the lambið, or the lamb.
Interesting.
Oh, that's awesome.
But they used to be there, but they haven't been found now. They were, as recently as 2005, they were looking for them, and they couldn't find them.
Okay, interesting.
They are also in this list. You can find them in several other places. I'll send you this article by Svavar Sigmundsson.
Yeah, Gísli, question: who is it that would have been going to try to look and re-find and understand the whereabouts of these historical stones? Like, was it a concerted effort from a university? Was it an individual's initiative?
Yeah, well, he was his job at the university was to, well, he, like any academics, they choose their own subject, and his subjects were name of places. So he collected names of places and located them. And he had local people sending a report of all the names of places, and he was working from these names and how frequent a certain name was within the country, in which area are the most common, etc., etc. And one of the things he did, he wrote this short article on stones used for testing strength.
Interesting. Oh,
Steinar. That's the testing strength stones.
Okay.
And I'll send it to you when I have your email, and I can also, if I have time, I could try to translate it.
Oh no, that's
No,
you don't need
that's
to
just
give your
be-
time for that.
It'd be wonderful even just to see the map, and we could probably put
There
AI
is no
to
map.
task. And
It didn't follow. It didn't come with a map. It comes
That's a different
just
one.
the names and the name of the places, and then the references also is referring to where he had the information from.
okay, interesting.
Well, that'd be just fantastic. Yeah, we could get that translated with all sorts of apps out there. You don't need to give your time for that, but
Okay, so we've just brought up the Old Man of the Stones map, and I should be able to share my screen here. So, Gísli, can you see the
Yes.
screen there?
Yes, I can see it.
So here is the map, and if I zoom in here, I should be able to actually show you the West Fjords. So
This is the Snæfellsnes Peninsula.
There
There's
we
the,
go. Okay.
Yes, the two places at
Here's Latra.
Latra.
Here's your stomping ground, and now here is, and it's color coded, so green for stones that have been physically located and confirmed, and red for those where people had found information but not actually been able to find the physical stones. So
Yeah,
when you're looking at
I'll
this,
check on. You see this. Yes, the apparently the one in Patreksfjörð is in the valley of Söðurlaugsdalur. It
Here, yeah.
it used to be a vicarage. It was quite famous because scholars have been sitting there. And I'll see if I can find any information on a stone there. There was no fishing from Söðurlaugsdalur. It was all farming.
right.
And so there may have been stone with reference to strength for farming labours or labour work. In Tálknafjörður, yes, that's the one I mentioned in Arnarstapavík.
Right here, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And this was one. So someone had searched for the stones in 2021 and 2022. Much of the land is overgrown. The soil has swallowed many stones and structures.
You see,
There's
it said
certainty that the stones are there, but
Arnarstapavík.
will take extensive searching.
And also in Selardalur.
Mm-hmm.
I'll check the one which is called Álkonussteinn. I quite often go there and visit my friends, and he's a professor in medicine, and he has a summer house there.
oh,
So
cool.
sometimes-
here.
Yeah, and this is in Kvesturdalur, and I see if Álkonussteinn. Álkonussteinn, I would doubt that would be a stone for stone lifting. Álkona is an elf. It's
Elf, okay.
a female elf.
Oh,
And see,
cool.
and they usually they are. Some people believe that elves live in stones or in small hills,
Okay.
Okay.
and that would be just reference to the elf.
Yeah.
And I have a book on the name of places and the history, because I helped that professor with writing that book
Okay.
in the area.
Okay.
He's descended from that valley. His father was born there, so he has a house there now.
Was there any stones that you'd mentioned that are not on this map, or are these ones that are red there the ones that you were referring to?
Yes, the one in Tálknafjörður and Selardalur, I was referring to those.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. That makes
No,
sense.
it would be great to see the map that you have and contrast it with the locations that are present here, just to see.
I wasn't aware there was a stone in Dynjandis Vogur, at Dynjandi. The green in Arnarfjörður. Yes, this one,
Here.
which you call Péturssteinn.
Peterstone. Yeah.
Well, Péturssteinn.
That's next to, it's a big waterfall
Yeah,
there.
that waterfall is very beautiful. You should visit it. It's the most magnificent waterfall we have in Iceland.
Yeah, my understanding is this is not a historical stone, that this was a
Right.
modern stone that someone had placed there because it's such a beautiful location. They said, you want to go visit
Okay.
the waterfall? We'll put a nice stone for you to lift.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Legstedt, you see there's one there called Legstedt, Legst.
Yep. We lifted that.
We were there, yeah.
Is that stone for lifting? Because that means a a gravestone. It's a stone with the name of the people lying underneath.
Yeah. So essentially, there is a large stone in the center, and the legend is that there was a lazy farmer who made a deal with the devil and said, the devil said, okay, if you can lift this stone, I will reward you with bountiful crops and wealth and health and whatnot. But if you can't, your soul is mine. And the devil being the devil, the farmer went to lift the stone, and the devil had been placing his foot on the stone or holding the stone so the stone couldn't be lifted. The farmer didn't lift the stone, and now his soul is trapped underneath this gravestone that's there. And in order to free his soul, the lifting stone has to be picked up and walked around the gravestone 100 rotations. And so that's the legend.
It's 220 kilograms.
Oh, yes. I didn't.
Yeah.
I've been there. This stone would then be at a place called, is it Heitdalur?
Yes.
Yeah. There's a very nice sort of hotel bed and breakfast there.
Yes, Heitdalur. Right, I was there last summer, you see.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah.
It's a cool, we'll send you a link to this website so you can take a poke around, because there's some individuals that have worked very, very hard. 3 American guys that have worked hard to do a ton of research for the lifting stones in Iceland.
Yeah, but on the Peter stone, that and something you might find quite interesting is, in a lot of places in the world where there is historical stones, and in a lot of places where there aren't, people are actually going now out themselves, finding cool, interesting locations and stones to lift, and creating these new, what we call modern stones of strength that, in hundreds of years will become historical lifting stones. So there's a really, really concerted effort here in Canada, in the United States, and other countries where maybe, the presence of historical lifting stones is either obscured, or there just were not by nature of the lifestyles of the people who lived here generations and generations before us. But people are now creating these modern stones of strength circuits that people travel to go and visit now too.
Thank you so much for joining us to talk about all this stuff. It's fascinating to hear from you.
I think it's a really interesting confluence between, now a local academic's perspective and then the more general understanding of the presence of stones. It just sounds like, from talking to you, that a lot of the stones we know about and the ones that have become very prominent in the lifting community are because of ease of access. And there's quite possibly more historical stones that people don't know about just because of an inaccessibility, and maybe, the break between where the academic and research knowledge of Iceland ends and the understanding of the strength community starts. And I think that this episode will really help bridge that gap. And we'd love to be able to take some of the material that you provide us and see what we can do to shine a light on maybe the presence of some of these stones that, at least to our knowledge, people aren't aware of and maybe haven't lifted in, decades and decades and decades. So, yeah. No, that's very exciting. Thank you so much for your time. It's been really, really, really interesting.
Well, I hope it will be of some use to your community.
Absolutely.
It will be, and we'll keep in touch with everything. And thank you so much for your time and your knowledge and expertise. It's really appreciated. I think a lot of people will take a lot out of this episode.
Yeah, and just on the community thing, it's just it's an interesting thing to talk about, sort of the stone lifting community, and how, a lifter from Ireland, Daniel, connected with you as a tour guide for his Icelandic stone lifting tour, then reached out to David, a Canadian stone lifter, to now connect us to talk to you. Like, it's just amazing when, people within the community are creating that further connectedness, because that's how we all learn and we can share knowledge and kind of grow this practice and the understanding of it together. So thank you to Daniel as well for connecting us. So
yeah, huge thanks.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Gísli. We really appreciate your time.
Well, I enjoyed talking to you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please be so kind as to leave the show a review, and then follow us over on Instagram at stonesofstrength_podcast.